Y'all, when it comes to building an author platform, it's so easy for us to make comparisons. We think, she sold more books than me. She had a bigger launch team than me. She's getting a lot more engagement on social, and on it goes. So today I'm thrilled to bring my new friend and author, Shannon Popkin, onto the show. Shannon is the co-author of Influence, Building a Platform that Elevates Jesus, and also the author of Comparison Girl, Lessons from Jesus on Me-Free Living in a Measure-Up World. She also recently launched a new podcast called Live Like It's True. And y'all, shout out to Athena at Redemption Press. She mentioned Shannon at this summer's Spark Conference for Christian podcasters. Shannon had presented a keynote talk at her conference called The Goal of Hearing Well Done, Not Well Ranked. It was so good. And then also shout out to our mutual friend, Katie Reed, who heard my podcast after it launched and recommended Shannon as a guest to me. I'm so appreciative of my relationships with amazing authors and podcasters. So y'all, Shannon lives out both the influence and comparison girl messages so beautifully, and I cannot wait for you to hear from her. So let's get to it. Hey, Shannon, welcome to the Book Marketing Mania podcast. I am so glad you're here today.
Kim, it is a joy to be with you.
Hey, I want to ask before we get started, could you share a little fun fact about yourself that people might not know from following you online?
Sure. Okay. So this is a weird thing about me. I really love it when my coffee cup matches the room I'm in.
Oh,
is that like a little weird or what?
So that's super fun.
So I have separate coffee cups for my office versus my living room. I don't know. There's just something very calming. I love my coffee and I love to feel like isn't that weird? I don't know.
No, that's super fun. I love coffee too.
I shared that on another podcast and the host was like, okay, you and I are complete opposites. I have this collection of coffee cups from everywhere I've come from. And so anyway, we're all different, right?
So you must have a lot of coffee cups, right?
Well, no, I just have, I have a few that work in each. If I'm going to go sit in the living room, well, I have those coffee cups.
Oh gosh, that's fun
weird,
fact.
Right?
No, I love
weird.
it. Yeah, I love coffee too, so I can appreciate that. Okay, so Shannon, our listeners are all nonfiction authors, and as you are, and they're at different parts of their journey. They might be launching their books right now, marketing. They may be just in the middle of writing them and building a platform. And I know, as you know, as an author, you get kind of wrapped up in all the things that go into book marketing, and we start having a tendency to compare ourselves to others, especially in the social media world. So that's why I wanted to first off talk to you about, because you did literally write the book about platform and our influence that we have and keeping our eyes on Jesus, other places they shouldn't be away from our calling. So I wanted just to ask you about that. If you could maybe just set the tone for this whole conversation and talk to us about what you think it means to build a platform that elevates Jesus.
Sure. So on the cover of our influence book, the title is Influence, Building a Platform that Elevates Jesus. On the cover, we have a lifeguard stand, and that's on purpose. So we opened with a little story where my daughter looked up at a lifeguard stand. She's about 3 or 4 and said, "That's the king, isn't it, Daddy?" Because it was this chair that was lifted up and it just looked so important to her. Right. And so the metaphor of platform is that you're lifted up, that you can be seen and heard. Right. That's the metaphor, whether it's a literal platform or not. But as Christian authors, our platform is a little bit different. Just like a lifeguard who's lifted up, they're not up there to be modeling their life jacket. And it would be really weird if they had this, look at me, I'm so cool, I'm a lifeguard, right? Kind of attitude.
Yes.
They are elevated so that they can be seen and heard, but they're there to serve. So they're watching the little kids who are running too fast and saying, "Hey, slow down." And, the person who's drowning, they're the first one to see and notice and get in the water. So as Christian influencers, our platform, it just serves a different purpose because we are there to serve other people, which lifts Jesus high.
I love that so much. So you also wrote the book on comparison and how of the comparison girl, lessons from Jesus on me free living in a measure up world. And so since you literally wrote the book on that, I know it's probably something you have struggled with, Shannon, as an author,
Oh, yeah.
as all of us do, because we do get into that. Especially in our social media world today, where we see what everybody's doing at every minute possible and how many followers they have and how many books they're selling and all the things. We can certainly get wrapped up into the comparison trap. So I know from your book that you have lots of lessons for our audience today. And I would just love to let you just share anything that might be on your heart, just about how we can get caught up in the comparison game with marketing our books and what biblical encouragement you might share with our listeners to kind of get through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, several things come to mind, but I think it can be so tricky because we set out with this great heart to serve other people, right? We have this burning message and passion to encourage other people and to lift them up. And then somewhere midstream, when we get to work at like sharing this message and letting others know about it, well, we can get all tangled up with comparing and wanting it. Like the two themes are kind of intertwined in my mind, like the whole, like, why are we building a platform and comparing? Because we're building a platform and we're glancing sideways. How am I doing? How am I doing? Oh, how is she doing? Right. And how am I doing in comparison to her? And wait, why does she have more numbers than I do? And it just can be so, it's like this tidal wave in our hearts, or like the undertow, like where you're just pulled further out and you don't even realize that it's happening. You just were there, maybe you started out just putting your big toe in the idea of writing or sharing a message, and then you're ankle deep, and then you're swimming and you don't even realize you've been pulled out into this dangerous territory of comparing. And I do call it dangerous because I think that comparison can sidetrack us and get us so off doing something other than we set out to do, or that Jesus intended for us to do. We can get so wrapped up in looking at the numbers and trying to promote and like that can actually overshadow the actual work that God called us to do, which was writing the book in the first place, and we can feel discouraged by that. We can have a false sense of discouragement, or a false sense of pride, as though, numbers mean that we are more valued in the kingdom of God. They don't, right? We all have value and place and a place to serve, and it might look different than somebody else. So if I could just offer another little metaphor that I like to use in my Comparison Girl book, picture a measuring cup, a glass measuring cup, and your cup is next to another author's. And, you have a bunch of gifts and resources in your measuring cup, and so does she, and they're mismatched. They don't match up. She has gifts that you don't have. You have gifts that she doesn't have. And the problem comes when we start putting value statements on, I'm a better storyteller, as if that carries more value, or she's better at curating great information. And they're just different. They're not, it's not as though one is more valued than the other. We're just different. And so we're called to different purposes. And I think what we need to do as Christian authors is just continually remind ourselves, okay, what did I set out to do here? It was not to lift myself up. And God did not give me more of something in my measuring cup that I might feel better about myself, or less that I might feel less about myself, right? He just gave me what's in my cup was meant that I might serve, right? And so if you picture that measuring cup tipped to one side, suddenly the lines are not relevant anymore. It's when we have our cups side by side and we're looking at the lines and we're always comparing, always measuring, that keeps us from actually doing the serving. But in reverse, when we tip our measuring cup and we begin to serve, then it frees us from the whole comparison thing.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever we all see measuring cups from now on, we're going to have that in our minds, right, to stop us,
Yeah,
which is good.
yeah.
And I know this probably kind of answered this question, but how would you say, like, just from your experience, how we can be inspired by others instead of, seeing what they're doing and being jealous or even intimidated by, whenever you see that happens, whenever it does come up, next time you're scrolling social media and you see something that makes you feel those feelings, what do you suggest for the listeners to do?
Yeah. Well, I do think sometimes when there can be a certain person that you're fixated on. I remember early on when my first book launched, my husband would call me in the middle of the day and he'd be like, "Oh, you're at 15,000 on Amazon, my ranking." I'd be like, "Oh, whoever knew you'd get so excited about being in place 15,000." But he would just, I don't know, for some reason, he would just watch that. I think that he's probably more competitive than I am. But then one day I said, "Hey, check so-and-so's book." Cause I know hers launched right around the same time as mine. And he would go, "Oh, she's at, whatever number." And so it became this thing that we did. I would say, "Okay, where's my number?" And then go check hers. And I started to notice that I would either inflate or deflate based on what her number was. I'd feel better about myself if her number was lower, or, not so good about myself if her number was higher. And I just realized, like, okay, this is not productive, right? She has no idea I'm doing this. It's just this random thing that we were first-time authors and our books came out at the same time. Like, that doesn't really, why am I doing this? And so I really did need to just take a break on that. And I needed to just stop. That's not productive. That's sideways glancing, and it just gets me off mission. But I think, you asked, what should we do when those feelings of envy or intimidation, or maybe, too, also pride, we can't say that never happens either. Right. And so when you're sitting at a table, let's say, just picture yourself, you're at a writer's conference or some place where authors are gathering, and you're sitting around the table and you're looking at, okay, this person over here just launched a book, that person launched a book, and you're finding, of course you're talking about these things and you start to feel that envy rising. I think just recognizing, like, okay, we are all sitting at this table here as teammates. And it's just like on a football team or a volleyball team or whatever sort of team, we all have different positions to be playing. We're different. We're all on the same team. And I think if we can just stop putting value statements in our differences and start noticing, okay, let me hear, oh, she has this passion for this cause. I don't know anything about that cause. Like, I can celebrate and champion her. Oh, she's the one who writes about injustice. Okay. And this one over here, she's called to write encouragement. She, sends out prayer emails and encouragement. And I don't know as much about prayer as her. This one over here. And just sort of noticing the uniqueness and the unique callings that God has given each of us. And detach all of that from how many numbers, how many followers, how many sales. It really, it could be that God has called me to write books that don't sell as many copies. Like that very well might be.
Yeah. Wow,
It very well might be. And I mean, I write Bible studies. So yeah, I mean, those are not going to be like best sellers by Bible. I mean, just by essence of that, I write Bible studies, I have shrunk my audience, but that's what I'm called to do. And even if the number of people who read my Bible studies and are changed by my Bible studies, maybe that is a smaller number, but I mean, that is a very rewarding endeavor. And if that's what God has called me to do, then so be it. Right. Or if he has called me to be a best-selling author with far more influence, well, then I need to steward that really well. So it's just different. There is no value statement associated with the numbers and the response of the market to our work.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder to steward what he has given us really well versus, we forget that part and we are on to the next, what else could he possibly give us versus let's just sit here and enjoy what he has given us. Yeah, and steward
Right.
it well.
And one more thing on that, I think the fruit of the kingdom grows differently. I think if my goal is set on the first 3 months after a book launches, if that's really what I'm going for and going after, and that's it, my goals and the way that I measure my success will be different than if I recognize that the fruit will be accumulated in heaven, right? Like it will be weighed and measured in heaven. I mean, the fruit of the kingdom, Jesus compares us to sowers who toss out seeds. And sometimes the seed falls into really soft soil where it multiplies and grows. And other times we toss seed out and it falls on rocky ground. And really, we're not given some great strategy on how. We're just told to toss out the seed. The goal of the parable of the sower is not like, okay, so here's what you do. You toss it over this way, or you wait until you're here. No, it's just toss out the seed. And God is the one who sovereignly ordains where that seed falls and what fruit grows up. And the other thing that is interesting about that parable is at the end, the fruit, some of the seed multiplies like 100-fold. So like there's just this enormous amount of fruit. Picture a basket with 100 apples in it. And, you just tossed out one little seed. And that's how it works with the kingdom of God. You might write one little message that sinks into a heart and changes the whole trajectory of that person's life. And they go on to influence hundreds of people. And you just will have no idea until we get to heaven, how much your work meant and what God's calling on your life actually was. And so I like to picture all of the people who are going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, and yet had no idea that they had done well here on earth. They were just doing their little tiny task and finishing the next sentence or the next book or the next blog post and doing their work for Jesus.
Yeah, just being so joyful where we're at and not, looking with a sideways glance. And that just leads kind of just perfectly into the next thing that I did want to talk to Shannon about for everybody is after launching several books now that you've written and launched, you, I know, have done some kind of creative things with your launch teams. And I know that's certainly another area we like to compare in and try to have big numbers in. And I love how you just said, like, you just never know who you're impacting. And then of course, what domino effect they have at impacting others as well. So I think about that a lot with launch teams and just, you never know, right? That's such a short time period where you're with a great group of people and you never know the impact. But we will know it one day. But that's what I wanted to ask you about is just, I know you had a couple of things that you have seen successful in your launch teams to get them engaged with sharing your content and reviewing your content. So would you share what you can? And I do want to applaud you again for sharing, like, this is something that I feel like some people are like, these are trade secrets. Do not tell how we ran a launch team, So I'm so excited for you to talk about this.
Well, thank you. And I know that's, part of what you do, Kim. So I could be learning a lot from you, I know. But I just have, I have always wanted to do launch teams just so that I wasn't alone, right? When I was doing this thing that it was such a big part of my heart and releasing it out into the world. In fact, I'm getting ready to launch a podcast and I'm like, I want a team. I want to do a launch team for my podcast. Yeah. No, I'm actually in the process of just, inviting some to be, and I'm going to keep it a really small little group, but just so that I'm not alone doing this. Right. But, my heart for the whole time with my launch team is that I could serve them. So that's just really the mind frame I try to have is how can I serve them? How can I encourage them? And this last launch team that I did was during COVID. I launched a book during COVID and we were all, it was right at the beginning. It was May 2020. And so we were all stuck at home and I thought, well, all of my speaking engagements got canceled and what can I do here? So I just decided I had kind of thought I wouldn't do a launch team, but I had lots of time now and I led an online study with that team. Like I went through the whole book with them, and I would not have had time to do that. And so, it just was a way I could serve them in this unique time. But I think just making myself available and encouraging them, cheering them on, that's a great way. That's just a great mind frame rather than what am I going to get out of this? Like, what am I? And also like just noting, my publisher is a smaller publisher. I've been published with Kriegel Publications, and they never offered assistance with the launch team. So this was something I was just managing on my own. But I still wanted to do it because I'm pretty social and I love doing that sort of thing. So, but my launch team was going to look different than somebody else's because I was funding it, and it was my time. And so, looking at how someone else's success with their launch team, like that, they're just different, and I just had to reconcile like, okay, this is just what I can do with my time. And I'm just going to invest where I am and what I have. I don't have enough money to have 500 people on the launch team, but I did have enough money to have, I think I had, 80 some on my last launch team. And so that was really fun. It was a manageable size for me. And I sent out, a gift box for them and just had fun with it. And I just chose what I could afford within my budget. And it was great.
Yeah, that's definitely what we've seen is just, it's not the numbers that make a big difference in there, right? Because you can have a big number and only a small number might be sharing and engaging in the group. So I think 80 is a great number, and what fun to get to engage with you as they go through the book that they're reading. Cause I know that's so important for the author to be involved. That's the whole reason they want to help you launch that. Well, and did you say at one time in one of your launch teams that you had like coaches?
The coaches.
That's what I was trying to remember. Yeah. Like some kind of a small group, something. Okay. How did that go?
Yeah, it was just an idea that I had because, as the author, it feels a little awkward to be asking for things, right? And there were also, again, I had a heart to serve. There were several women in the group that I knew were planning to be launching books of their own someday. And so I knew that, these were people that I could invest in, and then they might be able to invest in me in a different way. So I selected those that I saw a lot of potential in them. I wanted to know them better and asked if they would be coaches on my launch team. And then what we did is just divided up the team into, I think I had 4 coaches, and these are all ministry leaders themselves. And so then their job was just to be reaching out to the different launch team members and encouraging them and asking if they had questions. And so like I could duplicate my time times 4, right? But then also it was a little bit less awkward for me since I was leading this on my own. I wouldn't have been tracking people down and saying, hey, have you left your review out yet? That's just hard. That's awkward. But what we did is like on lunch day, we did a contest. And so we had in our Facebook group, we had a poll, I think it was, where if you left your review, you came and clicked, and it was like Team Kristen, Team Summer, right? Team Vicky. And so everybody came and like, and then the coaches were like, come on team, like we're falling behind. And and the teams were all like, you haven't left your review yet, Stacy, so come on, we gotta. And then the winning team got a little bracelet from me, so it was just something fun, a little contest that we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really worked well because I think they were the ones doing the ask, and I just could be removed from that just a little bit, and I could just have fun with it. But they also met with me a couple of times throughout the process, and we were just able to have fun and enjoy. We had a little group text going throughout the whole launch, and then they kind of divvied up the responsibilities also of like letting the team know, okay, tonight is our Bible study night. Here's the Zoom link. Here's the questions. One of them did that. Another one did like, here's the social media stuff to share. Could you please share this today? And then another one, let's see, she would do like interactive within the group. Hey, what's your favorite thing about, this topic in the book. Like, and she would
Uh-huh.
just kind of keep that going. And then the fourth one did giveaways, hey, we're doing a giveaway this week. So they each just kind of had their role, and they kept
Uh-huh.
that. We had a little Google sheet we were working off of, and they knew, okay, Tuesday's my day to share something in the group. And they just kind of managed that. And that made a lot less work for me, but I
Yeah.
was, just kind of working with them and saying, hey, this week our giveaway is, you know what I mean? And then they just kind of ran with it. It was really fun.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Cause I know, there's always so many people in the launch team that want to help, in an
Mhm.
elevated way if they can, and then there's some that are, they're just born cheerleaders and they're so good at that. And then
Mhm.
asking for reviews. I know that's tough on the author, especially to have to
Yeah.
ask, but
No,
that
it's
you
not
want to
fun.
get that feedback and show prospective readers that you do have a new book that they could
Mhm.
possibly read and be encouraged by. So I know you are, I'm sure, have other books under your arsenal after you've written a few already. I want to ask you what you're doing. So, as an author like yourself, that you've already published a couple of books, and then you're still, of course, reaching new readers and followers for your new books that would be coming out. What are you doing today that's being successful for you to reach new readers?
I don't even know how successful I'm being right now. I'm just in full podcast mode. Like, that really is
Yeah.
a new way for me to engage my audience. And I want to let people know who I am through that, but
Hmm.
I'm not going to just be doing the topics of my books. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping that my podcast, it's going to be a Bible podcast. So we're
Hmm.
going to talk through different Bible passages. The title is Live Like It's True. So what does it look like to live like this story from the Bible is true?
Hmm.
And I could foresee this helping me engage. I think that when you have conversations with people about a
Hmm.
topic, you learn to think of it in a more well-rounded way. And I
Hmm.
think it will serve my readers because they'll have a whole new library shelf of things to listen to, and maybe
Yes.
whet their appetite for new books coming out. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't know
Yeah.
what it will lead to. All I know is I felt like the Lord was leading me to take this next step, and
Hmm.
podcasting seemed like a natural next step, and I'm just going to be faithful and do my best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We all can't wait to listen. Well, and you said you also have a busy fall of speaking. So are you on the
I
road
do.
speaking, like in person speaking events?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you're
As
definitely
I,
meeting new readers that way too.
oh yeah, yes. And that is something, I have done for, quite a few years now. Um, I've never had quite this busy of a fall. We'll see how it
Uh
goes with
huh.
COVID. I think I have 8 different retreats this
Wow.
fall, so I will be quite busy. So I worked really far ahead on the podcast and just
Hmm.
hired a virtual assistant who's going to just manage social media and that for me
Oh,
because
yay.
I can't do both. I can't be
Yeah.
both. I've got to have my heart and my mind just totally focused on where I'm speaking.
Hmm.
I cannot do both at once. So the podcast was sort of my summer project.
Uh huh.
And then fall, I'll just be busy speaking, I hope.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll definitely put a link in there
Oh,
to your
thank you.
podcast. So
Thank you.
this has been wonderful, Shannon. Do you have any resources you'd like to share? I know you have some resources that kind of correlate to the books you've written on your website. I'd love to hear you just share where they can connect with you to download those or just get in touch with you more if they'd like to.
Yes. I have a book called Influence, Building a Platform That Elevates Jesus, Not Me. And we have an
Mhm.
influence quiz that you can come and take.
Mm.
So if you come to my website, shannonpopkin.com, you can find the influence book. And there's lots of different freebies and resources there for you on that page.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the Book Marketing Mania podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kim. It was great.